You were scheduled for your marriage green card interview, and your first question is, what are they going to ask me? How can I prepare for this important day? Hi, I'm attorney Megan Pastrana of Immigration for Couples, and my team and I are dedicated exclusively to helping couples across the nation and across the world and navigating the U.S. immigration process. If you haven't already done so, I invite you to subscribe to this YouTube channel. You'll just select the link below or the button below because I release videos on a regular basis, and I'm releasing a lot of videos in a series talking about the marriage green card process so you can be prepared. So you won't want to miss out on those videos. And I also invite you to follow our Facebook page at Immigration for Couples. I host a weekly live immigration attorney chat on YouTube and Facebook at 11 a.m. Eastern Time on Tuesdays, and I will be answering your questions live. So hopefully you can join me for the next event. All right. So these marriage interview questions, what should you be prepared for on the day of your interview? What are the questions that they are going to ask you? And if you haven't already watched the other videos in this series, you'll want to go back and check those out as well. I really dive into the documents you need to take and what to expect on the day of. But in today's video, I want to focus exclusively on the questions that you will be asked. And I'm going to give you a bunch of questions that you can use to prepare for your interview. So I like to break the questions down into different categories. And I'll go over each of these categories and give you some sample questions from each category. Please understand that even if you study all of the questions in this video and maybe all the other resources that you have found online, it's important to understand that the immigration officer may ask you completely different questions. They might ask you some of these questions as well, but it's really going to depend on your own particular immigration case, your immigration history, and the specifics of your love story. But in today's video, these questions will really give you a good frame of reference so you understand the types of questions and better understand how to prepare for this important day. So the first category of questions that you should expect and be prepared to answer are questions about your immigration history. A good way that both of you can prepare for these questions is by reviewing your application, the forms that were submitted, the evidence that you submitted. The immigration officer is will be going through and is wanting to go through all of the information that you have submitted to them. And so reviewing through those application forms is a really good place to start. They are going to expect, of course, that you know each other's dates of birth, your date of marriage, your most recent date of entry to the United States as the immigrant beneficiary, how you entered the United States, the types of visas that you've held in your life, any immigration issues you've had, such as have you worked in the United States without documents? Have you ever overstayed a visa? They are going to be going through the questions on those forms. So a good way to prepare is as the immigrant beneficiary, you can have your U.S. citizen spouse go through those forms and ask you questions. And whenever I prepare my clients for their interview, I do a mock interview with them. I've been to many, many interviews, hundreds of immigration interviews, so I can simulate that experience for my clients and go through questions with them. So it's very helpful to do that mock interview prep and go through those forms and have your U.S. citizen spouse ask you questions so you can be prepared to answer those questions about immigration history. And also, as the U.S. citizen spouse, immigration is going to expect you to be able to answer certain questions about your immigrant beneficiary spouse's immigration history as well, such as their visa and how they entered and when you petitioned for them and whether you've petitioned for others in the past. So it's important you're both on the same page with those details. So that's the first category of questions, that those immigration history questions. The next category of questions is really going to be questions about biological information or biographical rather, sorry, biographical information of each other. So as I said, dates of birth and then where your spouse was born, and knowing the city and knowing the details of where your spouse is born is important. They can ask you that. Of course, they can ask you what country is your spouse from. You should know that. They will ask questions about your spouse's parents. What are their full names? Where are they currently living? When was the last time that you saw them? When was the last time that your spouse saw them? How often does your spouse talk with them? How many siblings does your spouse have? What are their names? Does your spouse have any children? Has your spouse ever been married before? When and how did those prior marriages end? Yes, I know it's not a topic that you'd like to talk about, but they will ask. The immigration officers do like to ask, especially if there were prior marriages, when did those marriages end? So the date when they ended and why, and the why. Why and how did they end? Divorce, death, annulment, and also the why of surrounding the ending of that relationship. What happened? And when did your spouse first come to the United States? So as I mentioned before, knowing their first entry date, knowing their most recent entry date, and knowing how they came, the type of visa. Maybe they had a student visa, maybe they have an employment visa. You should know that. Then the next category of questions is going to be questions about your relationship. So, really, the entire relationship timeline, the meeting, how you both met and when you met, through your courtship, through engagement, through marriage to present day. So, what does that look like? Here's some questions. When did you meet? How did you meet? And if you met online, when did you first meet in person? How long did you know each other before you started dating? When did you start dating? When did you meet each other's families? How did your families feel about your relationship? How did they feel about your engagement? When did you get engaged? How was the engagement? Who proposed to who? How long were you engaged before you got married? How did that proposal go? What was said? If someone proposed, what were the words? What were the circumstances? Who was present? How did that proposal go? And how did the other person respond? Obviously, you said yes, but they want more details. Were there tears? Were there, oh my gosh, like I didn't expect this? What is it that was said? That's an important moment, so you'll remember, exactly what was said. Did you get married at a courthouse, a religious ceremony? When was that? Where was that? Who was present? How many people? What was the time of day of the ceremony? Did you have a reception? Did you have a DJ? What kind of food did you have? How long did the party last? Who were some of the people that attended your wedding? Which was members of both of your families present at the wedding? How many of your friends attended? Who were the witnesses? Where was the reception? What was the name of the venue? Then you'll move into questions about daily habits and home. Really think present day. So what kind of questions are they going to be asking? Well, anything that really makes up your day-to-day life. So what time does your spouse wake up in the morning? What is their work schedule? What days do they work? When do they start work? When do they leave home? When do they come back? Who gets out of bed first? What side of the bed do you sleep on? When you woke up this morning, what were the color of your sheets? That question seems to be a really popular one. I hear that one a lot. And what did you both have for breakfast? Do you normally eat breakfast together? What did your spouse have for lunch? How many times do you talk to each other throughout the day if you're both at work? Does your spouse typically eat breakfast in the morning? When you sit down for dinner at your house, what color are the plates? uh, Tell me, where is the refrigerator located in your kitchen? Where does your spouse work? How long has he or she worked there? What do they do there? What is their job title? And I've already asked this, what is your spouse's normal work schedule? But that really is, their start time, their end time, and what days of the week. Sometimes if a spouse has a varied schedule, then you're going to explain that. How long is his or her commute to work? Where do you each plug in your cell phones to charge? How many bedrooms are there in your house? How many bathrooms are in your house? Do you have a home or an apartment? Do you have a mortgage or do you rent? How many floors are in your home? Another really popular one is if I were to come to the front door of your home, walk me through, what does your house look like? I always have couples practice this. Walk me through the home. Tell me about the rooms. Tell me what each room is used for. Walk me, if there's multiple floors, walk me through each floor. What does your backyard look like? Do you have a fence? What did you do for dinner last night? Did you both eat together? What did you have for dinner? Who cooked? Who normally cooks? What kind of food does your spouse like? Who normally does the cleaning? How do you divide household chores? And how did you get to the interview today? All right. And then another category of questions. So let's move on to questions about finances. Immigration officers love to ask questions about finances. So, do you have joint bank accounts? And if you have a joint bank account, where are those accounts? How many accounts do you have? Do you have savings and checking accounts? Do you have individual accounts as well? Why do you have individual accounts? What are your joint bills? How do you pay your joint bills? Do you both deposit your paychecks into the same account? If so, which account? If not, why? Do you have your own accounts in addition to your joint accounts? And do you have your spouse listed as a beneficiary on those accounts? And how much does your spouse get paid? How often does your spouse get paid? What do you pay each month for your rent or your mortgage? What is that amount? Does your spouse get paid in cash, check, direct deposit? Same questions would go for you. And you're getting the idea, right? Any questions you can think of about finances, they're going to get in there and they're going to ask questions. If you have a setup where it's a yours, a mine, and our setup, in other words, you have these joint accounts, you have some individual accounts, you each have individual accounts, and you just have your finances set up in that way, the yours, mine, and our approach. Immigration will ask questions, and so you probably heard me ask why. Why do you have this joint account and why do you have individual accounts? So you need to be prepared to explain why you set up your finances the way that you do. Questions about celebrations and dates. So, what was the last holiday that you celebrated together? Of course, you need to know your spouse's birthday. What did you do for your spouse's birthday? For their most recent birthday, or if it's coming up, what are your plans for your spouse's birthday? What did you do for Valentine's Day? What did you do for New Year's? So you get the idea for holidays. Make sure you are not make sure that you are on the same page about holidays, and what you did and where you were. Sometimes for holidays, you might have gone to each other's families, you might have taken a trip, you might have had a lot of activities. So review that and make sure you are on the same page with those. Do you take vacations together? How many vacations have you taken together? Where are the vacations that you've taken? Do you have any upcoming vacation plans? Where and when? When was the last time that you visited each other's family? Where were you? When was it? How long did you visit? What did you do with them? Have your relatives ever visited your home and celebrated with you or spent time with you? When? When was the last time that happened? Who came to your home? When was the last out of state trip that you took? Did you fly? Did you drive? Details of that trip. And then they will also ask you questions about your goals and plans for the future. So they could ask, do you expect or do you plan on having children? How many children do you both want? What are some of your plans for the future in terms of where you will live? Or what are your plans for the future in terms of career? And if you are expecting a child already, if you are currently pregnant, they are likely to ask you, and you should know your due date. If you know already, if you're expecting a boy or a girl, have you decided on any names? Where will be the baby's room in your home? Have you had a baby shower yet? Do you plan on having a baby shower? What is your doctor's name? And so you get the idea of if you're expecting, and also future goals and plans. Again, they can ask you lots of other questions, but at least you're getting a flavor, an idea of the types of questions that they will ask you on the day of the interview. And it's really important, as I said at the start, that you go through these questions together, you go through your application, and you prepare. I know for a lot of couples, you feel like you already know each other, you know everything about each other, you don't need to prepare, but I cannot emphasize enough how vital it is that you do prepare. I always do a mock interview with my clients and pretend to be the immigration officer and go through questions with them. And there's always at least one question that catches them off guard, and questions they didn't even think about an officer asking. So being prepared so you don't get caught off guard, so you can go into that interview with confidence, is going to set you up for success and give you the highest chances of approval. I wish you the best of luck on your interview day. And if you'd like to learn more about the immigration process, I invite you to my free resource center at immigrationforcouples.com. Thanks for watching.